says, well, I know where they are. He says, where? I says, they're down at Fort Sam Houston. I says, and that's where the man goes that those records belong to. So this little fiasco cost me an extra 5 days in the service. So that was August 5th when I finally got out. I went in, or June 5th. So I went in on August 5th, so I was actually in the service exactly 34 months, and nearly 18 months of that was spent combat flying. I ended up with 360 hours of combat.
Okay, now since you've been out, you've been engaged in something that still revolves around the B-26 and your group. Can you tell us briefly what this is?
Okay. I could show this cover, I guess. The book, can you pick the book up in there? Okay.
I'll try.
About 1978, I got interested in trying to get some research on the bomb group that I flew with. I had a few souvenirs and orders and things like that. And back in those days, early days of the group, whenever anybody got an award, their home address was also on the award. And there was a fellow over in Indiana, and I thought, well, I'm going to call him up. So I got the long-distance operator in that area and told him who I wanted to find. And she says, well, I don't have anybody in this town. She said, you want me to check the surrounding ones? I said, I sure would appreciate it. And she says, well, I have a man over here. She says, about 20 miles away with that name listed. I said, well, give me his number. So she did, and I called him up, and I asked him, if he flew with the 386, and he said, yes, he did. So that really started this ball rolling. He sent me some pictures, and I copied them and sent the pictures back, and it kind of went from there, and I started writing letters to people, and this went on for quite a while. And then Roger Freeman from England, a historian over there, has written several books on English area of combat in World War II, and he came to 8th Air Force reunion held in St. Louis, so I talked to him. And I was the only B-26 guy there. Everybody else was 24s and B-17. So I went up to him after his talk, after the banquet. I said, well, I was in B-26. And he says, where were you? And I said, well, we started out at Colchester at Boxstead. He said, well, I'll be damned. He said, my father owns a farm that bordered your field. He says, I was a 15-year-old boy, and I used to write down the tail numbers and the nicknames of your airplanes as they took off on missions. So that kind of struck up a friendship there, and we exchanged things over a period of a couple of years. He'd give me numbers and names that I didn't have, and vice versa. So my list grew, and finally I was able to contact over 800 members from my particular group, and I started writing stories of the individual missions. I'd take it from the briefing room all the way through the whole mission and back into interrogation. And the result of that is this particular book here is the Volume 1. It has 708 pages and weighs 7 pounds, 6 ounces. And it traces the group from November 1942, when they were authorized to form a group, until the end of October 1943. Now, Volume 2 picks up at November 1st, 1943. And this picture here is a design I rigged up for the dust cover that will go on there. According to my calculations, the amount of material I have over 4,000 feet of microfilm of all the records from my group, and I have contacts with underground people who served in the underground during the war, and actually enemy pilots. I talked to Adolf Golland, and I talked to Eric Hartman about fighter tactics against aircraft, and he shot down 352 airplanes in World War II. So I've met, and by chance there was a Czechoslovakian squadron leader that I got connected up with, and we compared flight records and found out that he and I had shared 2 missions together where he was flying close escort to us. And so it's a real rewarding experience for me to meet all these fine people. And the game goes on. I'm still at it. I think I'll have about 6 volumes like this when I get the whole thing done. The group flew a total of 409 missions, and it's a lot of looking and a lot of paper writing, so I'm still at it. I made over 5,300 negatives from the photographs that people have sent me. I re-photograph their stuff and make my own negatives and send their stuff back. So that's the way it's gone now for all these years.
When you got through